building and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. There's nothing better as a radio talk show host than to speak for like 30 seconds in a TV news wrap. Um, and you have a bunch of people coming up to you. YouTube should be working now, by the way, to the people that are struggling with it there. But there's nothing worse than doing a news wrap on the local news station. Jason Zimmerman, who's a regular on this show, he does the local half hour with me every Friday. He reaches out to me yesterday, like around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he says to me, "Hey, Ben, I'd love to get your comments and thoughts on Kirk Bangstad entering the race." He goes, "I'm supposed to talk to a political science professor, but I don't want to talk to a professor. I want to talk to you about it." And first of all, I'm flattered by that, and I was thrilled to be asked to take part in it. It aired at 10 p.m. It's available on the W8BAY website if you didn't get a chance to see it already. But the funniest part to me is even people in the building that I work with, let alone I've got Mickey in my text line. Nancy Mickey told me she was in the studio to talk to Dave earlier, and she jumped into this as well. She was like, "Oh, you're famous. I saw you on TV." And like, far be it for me, I don't believe I'm famous at all for doing this show. But like, I do talk about politics for 2.5 hours a day, every single day, or, Monday through Friday. And that doesn't even count. Now I have an evening show as well from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time on TikTok Live. So there's an extra hour now where I just kind of decompress from the events of the day too. And it's just so funny to me that like TV still does kind of carry that extra cachet with it. And I appreciate you, Allie, for saying that. But like it carries that extra cachet. I had the ladies in the traffic department be like, "Oh, I saw you while I was eating dinner last night." And I was like, "Well, you talk to me every day, but it's appreciated nevertheless." But shout out to Jason Zimmerman for allowing me to come on the program with him. He interviewed me right here in the HBY studios, which was very nice of him because obviously there are people with PhDs in political science that I would argue might have some more insight, but they valued what I had to say, which is kind of surreal. And I have a lot more to say for the record, but I don't want to start with that because we started the show for an hour talking about that guy, and I really don't want to do it 2 times in a row here. But I do have some comments about his platform, which he posted to his Facebook page, which cause for concern as a progressive, but we'll jump into that momentarily. I want to start the conversation today with a conversation about the oil and gas prices, but not the way that you would think I want to talk about it. Needless to say, prices are up. And it looks as though they're going to be up for the foreseeable future. We are now 10 weeks into this 2-week war that we actually already have won a couple of times. You guys just haven't caught on to that yet. But nevertheless, these prices persist. And we've highlighted this before. If we were to actually get to a legitimate peace deal with Iran, which both parties involved right now say the ceasefire is still enacted, I'll allow you to determine how valid you actually perceive that statement to be. I have my own thoughts on the matter, but obviously we're all speculating on this right now. But if we were to achieve an actual peace deal today, it would take 6 months for peace of mind and clearing out the Strait of Hormuz from all of the measures that have been put into that waterway as it stands today. So minimally, bare minimum, assuming everything started working the right way again today, we would be looking at closer to 2027 before we started to see the traffic begin to kind of trickle through the Strait of Hormuz in a way that we were used to seeing prior to the time when Donald Trump decided to start this pointless war to prevent Iran from getting nukes that they were 2 weeks away from creating, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, since 1991. I'll allow you guys to determine how valid those statements are. Far be it for me to be indoctrinating people, as I was accused of doing via email today. But I wanted to talk about this a little bit with you guys because, as you know, I was one of the loudest voices about corporate greed during the Biden years. And during the Trump years, it isn't going to be any different either. And I would talk about Bernie Sanders and his End Corporate Greed Now Act and his effort to apply windfall taxes to the oil and gas industry to prevent them from gouging us. And talking about how, yes, a once in a century pandemic mixed with a war between Russia and Ukraine would ultimately result in inflated gas prices, but that shouldn't be resulting in record profits. And the fact that oil and gas companies during the Biden years were trying to attack oil and gas record profits while being blocked by conservatives shouldn't have been ignored. I then went on to highlight that was going on in every single industry, and pretending that it was unique to the oil and gas industry was the traditional liberal approach to this conversation. Find a problem that is pervasive in the economy, attack 3% of it. The Republicans will act like the bumps on a log that they absolutely are and prevent any kind of positive movement in that industry. And then Democrats can throw their hands up and say, well, we tried once for a week. I guess we'll never bring this up again. What's crazy about all of this, the End Corporate Greed Now Act, not even getting brought up for a vote when the Democrats had a trifecta. Any efforts to specifically target the oil and gas industry and corporate greed in that industry, absolutely stymied by the Republican Party, never to be brought up again. And I maintain when Democrats take back the House and potentially the Senate in November, they should be proposing anti-corporate greed bills every single day. Instead of doing impeachment trials of Trump every single day, instead you come out and you talk about the oil and gas industry. I want to provide you with some numbers from the only Democratic senator, technically independent, but the only one actually bringing it on a regular basis in government. And it's crazy in a world where ageism, specifically within the Democratic Party, is on so many people's minds. And as these people continue to completely outpace the demographics of America in terms of age, it is wild to me that this 86-year-old senator has the capacity to run circles around some of the people in Congress that are almost half of his age. And I think that shouldn't go ignored here. But I want to hit you guys with some numbers. Oil prices today per barrel are $105 and change. But for the sake of round numbers, we're going to call it $105 per barrel. Gas prices today, average across the nation, and if speaking for the people here in Wisconsin, we are just about on pace for the average nationwide here. Nationwide, the average gas per gallon is $4.46. So just to really hammer it home, per barrel is $105. Price per gallon is $4.46. In March of 2011, the cost per barrel was $105, and the cost for a gallon of gas was $3.51. Now, I am not willing to pretend that inflation doesn't exist, or that maybe some new taxes here and there were not applied to the oil and gas industry. I realize that this is not an apples to apples comparison, but the fact of the matter is we are seeing record profits. That is not up for debate. They brag about it regularly. The oil and gas companies are raking in record profits. We can compare an even $105 barrel now to 2011, and we are paying a full dollar more per gallon despite the fact that the costs are the same. I don't mean to oversimplify this argument, but the fact remains the industry is raking in record profits, just like they were during the Biden years. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz mixed with refinery problems in Indiana are absolutely resulting in higher prices than you should expect for a gallon of gas. But both of those things do not mean record profits. When you take all of this into account, we're watching the same grift happen again. And much like how the duopoly works, at least the Democrats pretend like they care about the problem. Whereas outside of, and I will admit, I saw Tim Burchett talk about it. While I have my issues with him, he is willing to talk about corporate greed in the oil and gas industry. That does not change the reality that we are facing in that industry. And while we should expect prices to go up as a result of our president's stupid war of choice that we absolutely did not have to engage in, it doesn't mean that we should expect to be fleeced as a result of those increases. Now, I'm getting my first call of the day here. Anybody else wants to chime in? 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150 for your thoughts on the matter here as well. It's about time we actually start to crack down on these kind of practices here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Good morning, Ben.
Hey, what's up, Larry?
Let's see. Well, the price of gas is what, 25% higher than it was in 2011? I went to a garage this weekend. I had some struts that I needed to have replaced. I didn't plan on buying them, but the guy was intent on selling me struts. They were high-end ones, and he quoted me a price of $2,500. And I told him I can get Bilsteins for $800. Why would I buy these for $2,500? Within a minute, he was down to $1,500 on the same shocks.
Wow.
That's a 40% drop. There is no, and then they're probably still making a profit on it. I was pretty angry when I left.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that's what they tell you, right? In sales, you never go first with the price, or you never start at the price that you're asking. But I guess we're not quite as used to it. Like, haggling has been accepted in certain markets. It's not necessarily what you expect when you go to a store. And it seems like it's just more prevalent now, and they're banking on you being willing to pay it. And when you push back, that's when the price changes all of a sudden. It's remarkable how that happens.
Well, most people don't research the parts before they go.
Sure.
I just happened to, and I knew all the prices. Now, if I wasn't retired, I wouldn't have done that, and I probably would have got suckered into buying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And your phone's breaking up a little bit, so I'm going to end it there. But you're absolutely right. Like, that's what they bank on, is in this world of information, they're banking on the uninformed consumer. As Ali highlights, it's the reliance on other people's ignorance. And we're dealing with it here. And what's crazy is I've posted this math. It's available on any of my social media accounts. And I posted it, and there's an army of people, and I can typically tell when something is a bot and when someone is an actual person. And the number of people willing to come up making excuses for the oil and gas industry, it's almost like a type of Stockholm syndrome, where no matter how much these corporations monopolize their industry and then take advantage of us to the tune of record profits while absolutely obliterating our environment, we will not hit that wall where we decide to say, no more from you. You're clearly not our friend. There will be people, and I promise you, they make somewhere between $45,000 and $95,000 a year. There will be people championing the never-ending greed of these corporations. Again, the prices should be higher as a result of the decisions coming from the White House. That is not up for debate. We are making bad decisions. It is the extra costs associated at a time when affordability is on every single person's mind. When the sitting United States president is still blaming affordability on the Democrats a year and a half later. Keep in mind, when it hits September of this year, for the people that have been listening to this show since the beginning, you will officially be listening to me at the exact same point in the Trump administration as when you met me in the Biden administration. Was I sitting there making excuses for the Democratic trifecta in September of 22? I absolutely the bleep was not. I was sitting there saying, you guys got elected under the guise of transformational change, and you have delivered on almost none of it. Now you're seeing these same people who were livid under the Biden administration, completely quiet here as the corporations are taking advantage of our political polarization. And it should stand to reason that when the only comments you are getting are stemming from Sanders, the independent, the Democrats who are willing to blame Donald Trump for everything, mostly rightfully so, seem fairly mum on the efforts to take advantage of the consumer, which should stick out to everybody who's listening to me right now. In an era when piling on to Donald Trump has become kind of the norm politically, why is it that they can't attack the record profits? We can draw a one-to-one comparison. He received $100 million campaign donation from the oil and gas industry. He said, I will return this to you tenfold. And we are sitting here getting gouged as the price of oil and gas continues shooting through the roof as a result of the decisions that Trump is making. And these companies are using those decisions as a smokescreen. And yet there is not a single peep in a midterm election about this obvious fraud, about this obvious corruption within one of the largest enterprises in the American economy. Not a single word to be said. Is that not suspicious to anybody else other than me? I shouldn't say not a single word because obviously Sanders is willing to take to social media to get it out there. Where is the rest of the Democratic consortium? Where is the rest of the blue MAGA liberals who are willing to blame Trump for everything? Rightfully so. Where are you on this one? Probably some food for thought here. Again, if you're just joining, the numbers that I am citing, in 2011, a barrel of gas was $105. Today, it is $105. Yet there is a full dollar's difference between the two. And the only person in Congress willing to speak out about it is Bernie Sanders. Everybody else, mum is the word. How is that possible? Genuinely, how is it possible that no one has any thoughts about it? We got our second caller of the day, and shout out to everybody on my live streams who are sharing what we're talking about right now. I appreciate all the help getting it out there to a larger audience. Let's see who we have. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
I got a question for you, something that does not make sense to me. And it's like, I live in Neenah, so I don't always get to Appleton. But at the corner of Memorial Drive and Midway Road, as I was coming through town, one gas station was at $4.49, one was at $3.95, and another one was at $4.25. Okay, why is it nobody is lined up at the $4.25 or $3.95 gas stations, and they're lined up at the convenience store that's charging $4.49?
Yeah, that's a very valid question. I mean, it breaks down to, and I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. This is a luxury that I am able to live life this way. But I think a lot of people just drive. They assume it's similar. And when you hit that gas station that's on your side of the road, that's just where you stop. I'm not saying it's right. It definitely, American consumer habits definitely set us up for failure. And I think it's pretty unavoidable, but it doesn't mean we should be allowed to be taken advantage of at the same time. But you ask a very valid question. Like, in an era when the gouging's so obvious, we don't have a lot of options, but like, choose the better of the two options to let the more expensive version know that they're not going to be able to get away with it.
And the interesting thing is, I see that same $4.49 per gallon gas at various stations throughout the Fox cities. It's not just one location. But it's like, what makes their gas different than everybody else's gas?
No, understatement, absolute understatement. And I'm right there with you. And I appreciate the call. It's always good to hear from you. And you're exactly right. Unless your gasoline is made out of gold, I don't know how you feel comfortable charging so much more in a fairly, that's why, I mean, Call me, put whatever ism you want at the end of this show. At this stage of the game, I don't care anymore. We should be nationalizing the energy industry. It should not be operated as for a profit. We need it to do things. And so if that's the case, you shouldn't be able to make unlimited money. We should treat it just like a lot of government services that don't operate for a profit. They operate as a cost. I said this about healthcare on Friday. I said, healthcare should be a service that costs money, not an industry that makes money. And I think the same thing should be happening in the energy industries as well. Realistically, it should be happening in the air travel industries. I did a segment about that yesterday. More Perfect Union has a story about it this morning. I'm not saying they're copying, but I'm also not saying they're not copying. But they said that should be nationalized. Like, we're hitting a point where a lot of these private entities have shown that they intend to take advantage of us. Once they know we don't have any other options, they are absolutely intending to take advantage of us. And we are seeing that in a number of different industries. Oil and gas is just the easiest one to highlight because we drive past the cost every single day. But I think it's worth highlighting there, to say the least. Cynthia says diesel $6 in Ohio on election day and at the start of planting season. Then she said, excuse me, $5.92. Oh yeah, the diesel prices are just getting stupid. They're absolutely just getting stupid right now. And again, that's going to impact us. And that was a segment we did yesterday. We have not even felt this in the food market yet. Like, our grocery store bills are higher, and it's all because of tariffs and natural inflation, and it has nothing to do with this very real issue. We were talking about how many millions of tons of fertilizer we have been operating at a deficit at week after week since March 1st, and it ain't pretty numbers. Like, we're absolutely going to feel this in a number of other ways as well, and you can bet dollars to donuts that the Walmarts of the world are going to take advantage of the fact that we are expecting higher prices to take them even higher than they need to be. Like, we saw it happen under Biden, and this is how the duopoly works, because the Democrats could not embrace corporate greed, as I will never stop complaining about. I was labeled a conspiracy theorist for saying that this handful of companies that run most verticals in the economy are coordinating prices in an effort to take advantage of us. And Democrats called people like me a conspiracy theorist. Now you can't shake a stick at somebody who isn't talking about the oligarchy in the Democratic Party. Glad you got here. Took you a bit long, but whatever. Beggars can't be choosers. They couldn't attack corporate greed when the Democrats were in office, and now they're being quiet again because they know if they are loud about it, we will expect them to do something about it when they inevitably end up winning in November and going forward here. So they can't be vocal about the efforts to crack down on corporate greed because they don't intend to do anything about it either. We saw no effort to do something about it during the Biden administration. They now will blame the oligarchy, but that was in my TikTok live. We'll get into that in a second, but they won't talk about this in the real way. I'll just do it right now. The Met Gala was yesterday. Jeff Bezos and his fiance paid $10 million to be able to host the Met Gala. And if you turned on MSNBC during that time period, they talked to you about how much headwind the Bezoses were meeting, not because there's an anti-billionaire sentiment out there in this country right now, but because Jeff Bezos has bent the knee to the Trump administration. It's not that we're anti-billionaire. We're anti-billionaire if you say nice things about the orange man. But if you're a billionaire and you say nice things about Kamala Harris, well, I'm willing to bet you have just all the best interests in mind, right? It's a similar idea here. We're getting gouged again. Not to say that Donald Trump's policies aren't leading us here. They absolutely are. But the fact of the matter is, these companies are taking advantage of us, and this would be a very easy platform policy to run on. Will it be run on? Absolutely the F not. And I can prove it with our own state governor's race. Wait until you hear what that platform is. Before we get there, Michelle says, And then there's this. I think I finally figured out that trickle down thing means all bad stuff most certainly does. Oh, no, I feel you. What are you talking about here? WPR has an article. I'm just reading the headline. Rising fuel costs slamming already cash-strapped Wisconsin school districts. Oh, absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. I can only imagine. And I have some thoughts on that as well. But I'll tell you what, I got to get to break. So we'll squeeze a break in here. We'll jump into that and one platform detail about the governor's race, which definitely stuck out to me. And I'd like to have a laugh about it with all of you as well. Short break here. We'll be back in just about 3 minutes. So everybody stay where you are. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. A lot of people in my YouTube chat highlighting that Costco is the way to go for a lot of people. Not an ad, by the way. Not an ad for me. It seems like they said if you can handle the lines, it seems like it's a cheaper price if you have a membership with them there. I don't know that from firsthand experience, but I trust the people that are saying it. Shout out to Herb, Carlo, Jero, Manny, Old Lib, highlighting that there are still some options out there, but again, it's few and far between. It's kind of like a similar conversation to what we were having with the airline industry. Spirit closing is devastating to anybody looking for affordable travel. And the pro merger brigade isn't really addressing the fact that had they been allowed to merge with JetBlue, that wasn't in the name of lowering their prices. You know what I mean? The prices were going to go up. They wanted the inventory is what it was all about, but the prices weren't going to stay low. But that would require embracing the reality that we are stuck in this intertwined ball of string that we're kind of beholden to these monopolies, and at the same time breaking them up, it's kind of hard to fathom what life would look like without them. But we also know that we're on essentially the trajectory of a snake eating its own tail if we continue down the path that we're on right now. And I think that's worth highlighting as well. I do want to shift gears here, and I would like to highlight, I'm not going to talk about this every single day, much like the Iran war, because for no other reason than my own personal sanity, I don't like talking about the same issues over and over again. We sunk about an hour into this conversation yesterday, just mostly me highlighting that I no longer am a contributor on the platform. And what this person means. But I want to at least address Kirk Bangstad one more time, because it goes to highlight, and this shows you, because it's easy to forget. I'm not a rock star when I say that I genuinely believe I do have the smartest listening audience in talk radio. It's not like when, a rock star goes to a different city and they're like, nobody parties harder than Appleton. And you know damn well that when he was in Milwaukee the night before, he said the same thing to the people in Milwaukee, right? Like, I genuinely believe if I thought you guys were dumb, I would just tell you you guys are dumb and you need to do better. But I don't think that for most of you. I think most of you guys are actually very intelligent and you know what you're talking about. When I talk about the goldfish memory, some of you are a little susceptible to that, but by and large, I think a lot of you guys, even if you forget, at the very least, you're willing to listen and hear things to the contrary of what you may believe. And Kirk Bangstad, owner of the Monaco Brewing Company, used Facebook to put his platform out yesterday on Facebook. And when I saw what it was, I had to screenshot it, because it straight up is a screenshot of the failed approach of liberals in 2024. Impossible to avoid here. I'm now going to read verbatim what it says. I value democracy over affordability because I'm seriously afraid we're not going to have an election in November. I believe all of the other serious candidates are at best naive or at worst fake, because they're focusing on what their political consultants are telling them to focus on, which is economic issues versus saving our country. It's like you could pull that logic and verbiage directly out of a Kamala Harris campaign from 2024, where she lost every single swing state. Like, honestly, reading that strategy put my mind at ease in terms of who is going to end up voting for this, because this is not progressive ideology. There is not a single progressive that is going to jump on board with what this is. And I couldn't believe in 2026, this is the way that people were willing to talk about electoral politics right now, at a time when people are nervous about going broke for healthcare costs. As Angelo says, keep running that 2024 campaign. It's got to work eventually. Here's what's crazy, because I know a lot of you on TikTok are only just finding this. Like, I only just started streaming a month ago. So a lot of you are very new to the program. You can find episodes of Outside the Box from January of 2023, where I'm sitting there saying, if Democrats are going to run on a platform of we need to defend democracy and ignore the affordability conversation, and actually Bidenomics is working better than you could possibly imagine. I said, if that is the intention of what you're going to run on for the next 2 years, it's going to be ugly in November of 24. I'm kind of the canary in the coal mine, which rubs a lot of people the wrong way in the world of politics. I very rarely am telling you what I want to happen. I'm telling you what's probably going to happen based on the way that the tea leaves are kind of being read and the way that people are operating. But what I know is this. This was a stupid policy idea in 2023. It was a stupider idea in 2024, and it is absolutely the stupidest idea in 2026. And anybody who is actually engaging in that politically does not know what it means to be living paycheck to paycheck. Anybody who is willing to say the ticket to elections going forward is democracy and not making sure that people can get into a house or not go broke from health care or not go broke from elder care or not go broke from child care or won't go to jail for smoking a plant or whatever the situation is. The idea that you think what's first forefront of everybody's mind is, you know what? I'm willing to bet that the president, who's barely even polling at 20% right now, might not leave the White House when his term is up. He's got to hope he doesn't get chased out of the White House before his term is over, let alone sticking around for a third term. And we see people pretending that democracy is a more important issue than affordability. I mean, good for you for trying to stick out from a crowd, but holy God in heaven, if I were still writing for that publication, the article, I'll probably put something in writing on the WHBY website, and I'll let you guys know when I do. Because I'll be honest, if you guys haven't caught on to this yet, the days of me pulling my punches specifically against the Democratic Party when they clearly have no interest in affordability are over. I think it's been made abundantly clear the Republican Party is the party that is here to cut taxes for billionaires and make life easier for oil and gas companies while starting wars in the Middle East. You who voted for that, you guys deal with that on your own. I'm not going to be able to convince you that's what this administration is doing at this point. So you reconcile with what you voted for on your own. But as the alleged opposition party that the Democratic Party is purported to represent, if you're going to try and run on some kind of anti-affordability platform going forward, there will not be a safe space big enough for you to hide on this particular program. You need to understand where the voters are at. Yes, democracy is important. Yes, my vote should count. But guess what? If the Democratic candidate is Gavin Newsom and he's going to tell me that corporate greed is in my head, then my vote will be for a third-party candidate, and you don't need to worry about Donald Trump stealing an election. You need to worry about the Democratic Party winning an election, and that platform, embarrassing. The idea that you would circumvent affordability in the name of something that so few people can focus on while wondering how they're going to afford food every single day. As Michelle highlights in my text line, the cost of living crisis. And as I stated in my speech that's available on my YouTube page, search me out at Ben Cominos. Please subscribe as well. The Republican Party does not get to have its cake and eat it too. They tell you we refuse to continue funding public schools anymore. They already get enough of our money. Oh, okay, fine. Well, then we're going to actually just raise income levels by building solar panels all over farmland and raise money that way, like what they did in Arkansas. Green New Scam. You can't do it. Oh, okay, then we're going to legalize marijuana and we're going to start making money off the revenue that we get there and apply that. What is this? A hippie nation? Can't do it. Okay, well, then we're going to tax the rich, like the wealthiest people in the state, people making 7 figures or more, and we're going to start to raise the revenue that way. What? You're going to chase business out of here. Okay, well, then we're just going to up the funding for public school with the existing revenue, because it seems abundantly clear you're not willing to accept any of the suggestions that are being made, while also saying that the money doesn't exist to actually fund things to the appropriate level. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. This is free. This is a free platform for anybody listening to me right now to go ahead and run on. It's not particularly confusing, but the Democrats are going to need to step up. The Democrats need to show what they stand for. When I see Alyssa Slotkin say, you know what works in New York City might not work in Michigan. Oh, I'm sorry. Democrats in Michigan would rather continue getting gouged for astronomical costs of health care in America, but people in New York have evolved beyond that. What are you saying about the people of Michigan exactly? When Kirk Bangstad feels comfortable running a campaign on the idea of defending democracy in 2026, I was mocking that campaign in 2023. The idea that you'd be willing to do it in 2026 is a laughable idea. When you see all of these factors piling up, Democratic Party, as Ben highlights, let me see here. I can only see half of the text, but I think he knows where it's going. I think we all know what the Republican Party is at this point. I don't know what the Democratic Party is. Am I an intelligent listener? You absolutely are. I appreciate that. And you're exactly right. Republicans, I've said this before, they embrace playing the heel in politics. They embrace telling everybody you can't have all these things that every other industrialized nation gets because we're here to kiss Elon Musk's ass and nothing else. It's the only thing that we were put on this earth to do. Democrats tell you, you guys deserve these things. And if you vote for us, we'll get them for you. Oh, but did we mention the parliamentarian? Oh, but did we mention Joe Manchin? Oh, but did we mention the Supreme Court? Oh, but did we mention 3 random House members that decided completely apropos of nothing that they were going to retire at the end of their term this year, ended up blocking or facilitating this very positive or not positive legislation? There comes a time when you run out of excuses and you have to come through in a reasonable way. And as one TikTok poster says, do we mention the Epstein files? I mean, not today, bruv, but like, exactly. Don't even get me started. We got a call coming in. We got a couple of minutes. You got to go quickly here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Ben, it's Gary calling. Say, I hear your program and you're talking about affordability and then you had the lady that called in on the gas prices at the Four Corners or whatever. I'm wondering, and my contention is that it's not only a price issue or how prices have skyrocketed, but it's a wage issue. I don't care if you're on Social Security getting Medicare and the health out-of-pocket health costs and all those things. Yeah, it is all that, but the deal is a lot of people are not earning enough money. I don't care if you're a college graduate just graduating this spring. Unless you're getting $200,000 to start, you're really behind the 8 ball in today's economy in terms of what prices are. Those numbers are so far out of what I could ever imagine in my lifetime. And yet all of these financial planners and that, they're all talking about retirement. Hell, it's not retirement you got to worry about. You got to worry about living between 20 and 65 years of age before you even get to retirement.
100%.
And I'm still saying,
go ahead.
And I'm saying it's the earnings, the wages. I don't care if you're getting a pension or whatever it is. Those things are way behind the price increases that are happening. So you can't just talk about prices and gouging and stuff like that. It's true, but it's also the people are taking a hell of a hit.
Well, it's a compounding conversation, right, Gary? Because, and I've said this before, and I'll let you go here, but this is a smidge tinfoil hat scenario here, but wages have stagnated for a half a century. The reason we didn't notice is because we were getting cheap stuff all the time. And the way we were able to get cheap stuff is we essentially enacted warfare on countries all over the planet, taking their materials, getting their cheap labor, whatever it was. Our wages didn't go up, but our TVs got bigger. Our video games looked fancier. Our houses looked nicer, even though they were made cheaper. Now, the cheap options no longer exist. And to your point, Gary, the wages are so far behind. Realistically, during Trump's first term, up until COVID, which obviously had a negative impact, there was wage growth for the first time in a long time. And it was much more impressive than anything that happened during the 8 years of the Obama years. The reason that he doesn't get credit for it, much like how the Biden administration does not get credit for trying to crack down on monopolization, is because Joe Biden's FTC and Lena Khan was the first effort in 45 years to crack down on monopolization. The modest wage increases that took place under the Trump years were needed, but by no means commensurate to where we needed to go. And as the cost of living was continuing to go up, ultimately climaxing in the version of a worldwide pandemic that shut everything down, you see the way that things are working. And you're exactly right. You know what's interesting, and this is kind of like, I've been pitching this for a while in the media world. There's what's called the money demographic. No offense to anybody outside of this demo, but in the world of media, what people look at is your 25 to 54 demographic. They tell you those are the people that spend money. And I've stated lately, they need to change that from the 25 to 54 demo to the 35 to 70 demographic. Because you find me a bunch of people in their 20s with expendable income looking to find ways to spend money. I can find you plenty of people in their 30s that do it, specifically the back half of their 30s. I'm doing all right now. But the idea that people that are 27 are looking to buy a home and start a life and do all these fanciful things, laughable assertion, in my opinion. But of course, that's all it is. It's just my opinion, but I'm pretty sure I'm spot on with that. I have more thoughts on the matter, but I have to put a pin in the conversation there. I'll tell you what, though, before we go to break, and if you're listening to this live on or not live, if you're listening to the recording on this on Political Voices Network, please do not take advantage of this because it will have already happened. I am talking in the past here at this point, but we are running a promotion here that I am trying to bring up on my screen. And of course, at the worst possible time, my screen decided to freeze up on me here. But we are working on the Tale of Two Tailgates. We are qualifying people for a trip to a Milwaukee Brewers series in St. Louis. We're talking Costa Hotel, gas, the tickets, the whole shebang. I'm taking caller number 5 right now during the commercial break. We're going to get a little bit of information. You'll be a qualifier for that contest if you are able to come out of it. And then after we come back from the commercial break, I want to go into the realm of education. I've been one of the staunchest people against the idea of AI, specifically in the classroom. How do you walk that fine line of making sure that your student, your children, are able to use the technology of the future while also not growing to be incredibly dependent on it? We're going to jump into that idea on the other side of the break. But first, ticket giveaway. Caller number 5 right now, live on the air, and we'll be back in a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box here on WHBY. You know what's better than Googling a plumber and hoping for the best? Checking the reviews and seeing your neighbors already trust and love them. Roush Plumbing has the Google reviews to back it up. The Fox Valley homeowners are raving about the fast, friendly, reliable service. And here's the thing you don't see every day: a free text line to a real plumber. Got a question before you schedule? Text it. Sometimes that's all you need. And with spring rains coming, don't wait to make sure your sump pump is ready. Call or text Roush Plumbing, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Find that free text line and more info at timroushplumbing.com. All right, and we are back outside the box. Ben Comino's WHBY Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Jam-packed first hour of the show. We were talking about just more evidence that we are very obviously getting fleeced in the oil and gas industry. We should expect to see price increases, but dealing with the levels that we are is absolutely brought about as a result of corporate greed. And I have to laugh because, as I've been telling you guys, there's so many new ways to take part in this show now that it really is finding a bunch of new people. And like the best part is after doing countless hours, I would say 100 hours of Democratic price gouging and highlighting that Bidenomics was not completely the fault of the Democratic establishment. I do one segment about Republican or price gouging during a Republican administration, and a new person comes out of the woodwork. Gas companies are gouging us with a bunch of question marks. Are we playing political football today? It's the Cope Bowl. No, welcome to Outside the Box. This is like an actual way to have a conversation. If I was willing to talk about corporate greed and use it as not an excuse, but as a rationale for why we saw the price go to the levels at which we did, obviously I'm going to be willing to talk about it in the same light now that we are seeing similar actions being enacted in the Trump administration. The biggest similarity between the Trump administration and the Biden administration is that nothing's getting done, even though there's very obvious evidence that this stuff is happening right now. But I welcome you, Jexter, to consider following the channel if you want to stay a little bit more enlightened and not kind of dig into your one side or the other bowl here. Don't get me wrong, I can objectively say that just about every metric that you measure standard of living by is getting worse under the Trump administration here, while acknowledging that Biden absolutely hung us out to dry. It's not hard to do this. It's actually apparently very hard to do this. It's not hard for me to do this, though. Okay. So I want to get into a conversation that I'm hoping will drive a little bit of user participation. And I see I already have KG out in Houston in the text line that I'm happy to jump into here. It's the concept of AI in education, and allow me to like paint this with a comical lens, and then we'll kind of jump into this in a more realistic way. There is a stand-up comic actually from my neck of the woods, Billy Gardell. A lot of you might remember him more as Mike from Mike and Molly. I don't watch network TV because I do this thing where I like watch good stuff, so I don't watch what's available on like the networks in the evenings. I find it to be fairly rote. But I know Mike and Molly was a particular popular program around the country. Billy Gardell is a Pittsburgh comedian who ended up getting cast in that role. He had a stand-up routine that he did in Pittsburgh where he talks about being a new dad in like the mid 2000s. And he talks about, because it's the standard, that demographic. Oh, we didn't have video games growing up, and that's ruining this generation, and blah 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 blah. But he covers it in a much more realistic way. He's like, now look, I don't like this video game stuff, but I also know that it's the way of the future, and all these kids are playing those. And he says, and you don't want to be the father of the child who's sitting there at lunchtime playing jacks, looking at all of his fellow classmates saying, my dad says this is a video game. And they all kind of mock him and look at him like a crazy person for not kind of keeping up with the times, right? And he acknowledges that it's the finding that balance between letting them take part in what is relevant for the day, mixed with making sure that he goes outside and gets sunlight and knows how to interact with human beings and all that jazz, right? And I think it's a very rational approach to take towards gaming in this era. And I talk about, as a pervasive gamer, I heard it my entire life that I was not going to know how to hold a conversation and that I was going to be socially inept. and I talk to you guys for 2.5 hours every day, and I very rarely am staying at my apartment because I'm very much socially capable. And so there's all these narratives surrounding these talking points that are not relevant, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that it is absolutely on a person by person basis, mixed with the regulation and rules that are put around the technology. Are you catching on to what I want to talk to you guys about here? We are facing a very interesting time period right now. We are nowhere near the point that a lot of the people that created AI want you to believe that we are in, specifically focusing on AI in the classroom, and it's going to take all of our jobs and we're going to fire all these employees and replace people with AI. It's not going according to plan. Not to say that the technology can't get there eventually, but as it stands right now, like we're in like the fax machine era of AI, so we've got a ways to go before I think it's actually going to be relevant. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an understanding of how it works and how to use it in your own industries. And that presents itself with an interesting proposition here, because much like the Billy Gardell stand-up routine, you don't want your child sitting there writing with pencil and paper saying, my dad says this is what AI is. But you also want them to have the basic capacity for deductive reasoning and reading comprehension and understanding how to learn, not losing the muscles in your brain that allow you to make these kind of jumps. Like, I'll say something that unless you're listening to me and you're 15 years old, we all can relate to this sentence from when we were growing up. I don't care if the calculator can do this for you. In what world are you going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time? Whoops, waka waka. Turns out we all have a calculator in our pocket all the time. It can provide me what the graph of 3x to the third minus 2x squared plus c is going to equal, and I don't really need to know how to get there. I understand the importance of understanding the nuts and bolts of how to get there. I am not advocating that we don't teach the nuts and bolts to an extent, but the idea that that technology isn't going to be pervasive, minus some kind of huge societal collapse, which will have much bigger issues than knowing how to plot the tangent of an arc of a satellite, were that to happen, you're going to have that calculator in your pocket. And so the schools need to reflect that everybody now has access to a calculator in their pocket. And it's kind of the same principle with AI. No, I don't think it's going to replace human connection. No, I don't believe we are anywhere near this utopia where it does all the work and we live in some kind of UBI utopia world where all of us are just creating art all the time. I'd love to get there, but I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. But I can tell you right now, I am one of the only people, and I have broken down once or twice. I'm not going to say I've never used it, but I work with people that ask AI questions every single day. When you read a Ben Comino's article, I don't punch my article into AI and then change some things up so it sounds like a human wrote it. I still write it all from scratch. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm a dinosaur because I'm going to be competing against people that don't care, that just want the information, and the fact that it's completely written by a human versus mostly written by a human versus somewhat written by a human might not matter to as many people. And it's a matter of finding that break-even point where you're not making yourself replaceable while at the same time understanding how this tool can be utilized. I remember my second day of kindergarten still. And like, this is real. And some of you that either are my age or have kids that are my age might remember this. I remember we had a whole room called the computer room, and we would take turns on the handful of computers that we had in the computer room. And we learned how the basics of a computer worked. And I remember learning, like, this is a mouse. This is how you use a mouse. This is how you save a thing. And we were all sitting there as 6-year-olds. I didn't have a computer in my house. Most of us didn't. And we're learning, okay, so this is how this thing works. What, I can play Super Munchers and Oregon Trail on this thing? I don't care about any of the other stuff that you're talking to me about. This is the only thing that I care about now. But we were taught how to use it. And I'm willing to bet in the early 90s, there were probably people like, this computer stuff is going to take our jobs. You don't want to be too dependent on the computer. You still need to know how to write in cursive. You know what? 13-year-olds don't know how to write in cursive anymore. And I don't feel like we've lost that much societally as a result of not being able to write in cursive. So I ask you, if you are a parent, if you've been a parent, if you're a grandparent, I'm going to read KG's comment in a second here. I have Allie in my TikTok chat who's currently a student in Central PA going to school for forensic science, talking about how she runs into these all the time, runs into AI in the classroom all the time. The professors are using AI to do their job. Like, there's an element of being stubborn about it, which I am, and also acknowledging that it's here. True story, and this is part of the reason why it took me so long to get on social media. After I graduated college, which, as I've highlighted, when I was in college, you needed an EDU email to use Facebook. If your email address did not end, I was caminob@allegheny.edu. When that email went away, I technically would have no longer had access to Facebook. That's how long ago we're talking about here. When I graduated in 2010, I sat there, I was at a crossroads, and I was like, okay, I can either stay on social media or not. And I was like, you know what? This social media stuff is kind of stupid, and I think people are going to realize that. So I'm just going to get ahead of the curve now and not use it. And for 10 years, until my media career really started to take off, I did not touch social media. It was a strategy that I used, and eventually I was like, you know what? If I'm going to push this show out to as many people as possible, I'm going to have to break down and live stream the show on Facebook and on TikTok and on YouTube and soon on Substack. And I'm going to need to post more often. And I'm going to have to actually do this stuff because it's the only way to, without a marketing budget, to reach outside of that circle. And as Robin highlights, but you need to have the intelligence to be able to use it. Exactly. And so it's a catch-22 because AI is taking away a lot of the basic fundamentals of what it means to learn, but to not learn how to use AI in general, I think is going to put you behind the 8 ball. I think if I had a child, it's a matter of the regulations. I had parents that there would be days where they'd be like, yeah, Ben, it's raining out. Go ahead and game to your heart's content. Who cares? They'd be other day when it's like, didn't you play on that thing a little too much today? How about you go get outside and throw the ball around with your brother a little bit? Okay, fine. I guess I can do this for a while. Making sure that I stayed active, that I got exercise, that I still saw the freaking sun. And I think it's going to be a matter of a similar approach here, as I still stubbornly drag my feet when it comes to incorporating AI into this show, into my life. I just don't use it. I had a friend of mine yesterday who looked up something, I can't even remember what, and she says to me, don't judge me, but I asked Claude about how to do this. I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I am silently judging, to be honest, but like, it's the way everything is trending. And I'm a firm believer in using AI as a personal assistant, as someone who can make the what's the word, not rudimentary, what am I looking for here, just the most boring parts of your life a little more accessible. I'm here for it. But the idea of using it to create content, hey Google, give me 2 sides of the same coin segment about X, Y, and Z. Why even bother doing the job then, if that's the point? You know what I mean? It's finding that happy medium. Let's see, we got a ton of comments. It's very difficult for me to keep up with the TikTok and YouTube chats these days. You guys are all very active, and I appreciate that, but it's hard for me to reach through all the comments here. So we'll start with the text line. It's from KG out in Houston. Concerning AI and education, I can tell you that at the college level, the little blue book is starting to make a comeback. That means students taking an exam have no electronics, just old school pen and paper. It's one way to see who's relying on AI too much. Oh, absolutely. And like for some perspective, I went to a liberal arts college, Allegheny, very different way of educating. Every single test we took was not only open notes, but you could take it anywhere in the building. You could go into any classroom and go ahead and take the test there. And I'll be the first one to admit it. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cheat my ass off in all these classes. Are you kidding me? And the exams were written in a way that the answers weren't in the book. Now, smartphones were only just catching on at that point. It's a little different today, but even online, like these were hypothetical questions. These were questions that took the principles that you learned, but wasn't asking for rote definitions or rote application. It was taking what you learned in class and applying it to real life situations and requiring that you are able to kind of crack down on or able to figure out how to use the information that you have in a way to answer these questions. I'm willing to bet that's probably a little more difficult today. But we had the little blue book approach, and that was all the way up until 2010. So I'm not surprised at all. Phil says, you just mentioned that you were in a computer room when you were younger. Sorry, but that does in fact make you a dinosaur. I feel like that every time I tell somebody I was born before the internet. No, exactly. The idea of a computer room is a hilarious concept. But like, yeah, it was like a little trailer that was like 7 degrees that they added off to the side of the school, and they put a handful of computers in there, and that was where you played Super Munchers. DSL says a huge difference is math, and some of that other stuff we taught were useless, were actually brain exercises that help development. AI will make people absolutely. And for me, my biggest knock on education in general is that it fosters memorizing information, but not necessarily utilizing information. And I've always said the era of memorizing that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776 isn't as relevant as it is today, but understanding why we care when the Declaration of Independence was signed is what schooling should look like. I've always believed that was what the effort of like the core education program was all about. I'd argue it missed a little bit in my humble opinion. Again, was not taught via core education, do not have students in it, but just on my interpretation of how that kind of education system works, I think it's pretty difficult. It's difficult for me to look at it through any other lens, but I think you're exactly right. I mean, in a lot of ways, math is not necessarily, or at least the intense versions of math are not as. It's not like it comes up in every day. That's not a hypothetical. Like I use derivatives as an example of last week. That's how you find the equation of a line that is tangent to an arc. I have not had to use that information since graduating from Calc 2, but the principles that you learn for problem solving and working your way through it. Organic chemistry is very similar to doing proofs. Like when you talk about, geometry and whether or not this can be true. Whoa, well, if this is true, then that can't be true. And fundamentally, those kind of logical exercises are what the foundation of outside the box is based upon. As I oftentimes tell you, I don't have sources. I don't have insiders that tell me this stuff. It's just basic deductive reasoning and taking some information and running it through the basics here. It's a very strange conversation, but if any of you have any thoughts as well, I'm interested in it. 920-281-1150. Are you embracing this move? Is it something that you think is avoidable? Are you in your kids' ears about the importance? Because I can tell you right now, a 13-year-old Ben would hear what the adults in the room are saying and then typically ignore it. Just going to be honest with you. As I've been stating a lot lately, I did have some issues with authority back in the day that are worth highlighting. If you don't have any more thoughts on this, and I want to root through what the people in the TikTok and YouTube chats are saying here during the commercial break, but we're going to jump back into the world of politics and affordability. Welcoming your calls as well, though, 920-281-1150, and we'll be back in just a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. Oh, hey, we're back. Got a call during the commercial break from Betsy, who I always appreciate. I'm interested what she has to say here. Betsy, what's happening?
Hey, good morning. I have embraced the inevitability of AI, and I think there's a fine line between cheating, using it to cheat, and using it to make life better. And I think we're not going to change the fact that some people will use it to cheat, some people will use it to steal, just like they do with the internet, right?
Absolutely.
And so, for example, instead of creating a speech using AI, I use it to, like when I have to MC an event, I help it to outline my script. Okay. It can give me an outline of something and then I work from there. I think there are a lot of uses for it that are helpful and not cheating. But having said that, I'm as concerned as the next person about people going too far with it as they already have. So, but it's inevitable, right? It's inevitable, and it's not like if we all a bunch of us boycotted it, it's going to go away. It's here. It's here to stay. So we just have to teach how to use it responsibly. I think there's probably going to have to be some ethics courses, even in high school. They're going to have to understand the ethics of using AI because it's going to be such a normal part of our life. So having said all that about the technology of today, I do want to say something about cursive writing because I'll push back on you saying that we're not going to be any worse off by not using cursive. I think it's a part of our culture, a part of our history. And there are few parts that we can bring to the next generation. You know, my kids don't have to know how to polka. They don't have to know how to play sheephead. But if they want to read the Constitution in its original form or the Declaration of Independence in its original form, they're going to need to understand cursive. If they want to read a little in their grandma, they're going to need to read cursive because grandma writes in cursive only. And I just think, so maybe it's an emotional thing for me, but it's same with Native Americans kind of saying, hey, we want our drumming circles to go on to the next generation, right? It's a part of our culture that we don't want to lose. And I think it's a small way that we can bridge the gap between generations.
Yeah, and for the record, I feel like I was one of the last generations to actually learn it. So it's not even like I'm coming from it from well, I didn't need it, so why do they? And I absolutely understand that logic. Whether or not we can impress that upon future generations, only time will tell. But I do appreciate that sentiment that I hadn't considered, nevertheless. So I appreciate you calling in and chiming in with that. But yeah, and the inevitability of AI, it's a matter of teaching it. And in my opinion, Betsy, I think it's also important to highlight because why I think, and tell me what you think about this theory. This is not backed in any fact, but I have always been a believer that the reason why social media feels so corrosive is because while some of us on there might be 15 and other people might be 35 and others might be 65, we all have relatively the same amount of experience using the internet. And it's kind of like we're all a bunch of 20-year-olds on the internet. So when it comes to AI and using that kind of stuff, I think it's important to teach it the right way. And I think it's more important to teach that with age doesn't necessarily come experience because we're all new to what this is and the way we're going to be operating on it. I don't know that I'm actually right with that theory, but I just don't understand why social media is so mean all the time. So I try and get to the bottom of why that is. And I think that might be part of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think social media imitates life, right? So I think people are generally getting more mean-spirited. And I don't think I'm going too far off the edge here by saying that one of the reasons that our United States culture is becoming meaner is because that's the example that's set for us from the top, is that
Sure.
It's cool to be mean. It's cool to call names. It's cool to blame people and try to get revenge. And that's a top-down mentality that's been set from the White House. And so that's part of why I think we're becoming mean is becoming kind of cool, which is really sad. And of course, that's going to show in social media.
All right, that makes sense as well, and I think you're probably on to something there with it too. Betsy, I appreciate the call as per usual, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for being here. Always a good call from Betsy, especially when it comes to the education world and what to do with our young people. Got a bunch of comments now. Ethan says, "I think AI will just completely supplant people's own mental faculties. How often do people use GPS even when they've been somewhere before? Unless you resist it, it'll happen to everyone slowly." Well, now I feel personally attacked. Anyone who knows me knows that I have no concept. Like, I'd argue I'm a man with very few weaknesses. And two of those most glaring weaknesses are I don't know how to spell and I don't know how to get places. And that's because my entire driving life, I had access to GPS. In my entire writing life, I had access to spell check. And I genuinely do believe that Ethan is on to something here, that if you let people just ask AI for things, they will stop figuring out how to find things out on their own. It's cliche at this point to compare real life to this movie, but if you haven't seen the scene in Idiocracy when Luke Wilson goes to the doctor and the doctor's played by Justin Long and he's like a surfer bro, like, yeah, your mind's all messed up and stuff. Well, he doesn't say that. He says stuff that I can't say on FCC airwaves. And then Luke Wilson's asking the doctor questions, and the doctor is asking a robot for the answers to the questions because he doesn't know them, but he knows that he needs to ask the question. Like, that isn't going to be as far off as a lot of people realize, because it's the kind of stuff that you take for granted. And this is coming from a guy that grew up being told that all of his actions were going to ultimately end up ruining him academically and socially, right? So I feel like I have a little more clout on this issue than a lot of people talking about it, especially in talk radio, right? When you got some 60-something-year-old boomer right-winger talking to you about socialism and all the kids are just lazy and video games are ruining. No, that's not what you're listening to on this show. This is a much more realistic take on what's happening, and I do think it's a cause for concern. And to Betsy's point, to the point that I make regularly, not embracing this doesn't feel like an option because it seems like it's going to be in other nations. And now if those nations are working in a more efficient manner than us, that's going to be a part of this conversation as well. So I just kind of figured I'd propose this as some food for thought. Michelle says, when it comes to technology and many other things, I try to educate my children on finding a balance, everything in moderation, and how to identify when the technology is in control of you versus you being in control of the technology. Being honest about the dangers too. It's not one and done conversation. Practicing what we preach is kind of important too. Yes, I get a lot of eye rolls, and I know, Mom, but the repetition is what will make it stick. Oh, absolutely. But see, Michelle, what I'm nervous about, where I see this problem, and I think I've used this example before, I frame myself as an FDR style progressive. I like a lot of what that guy did economically in the 40s. If you type in FDR fascism, because I already know the answers, right? I'm just looking for the articles to back up the claims that I'm already prepared to make. That any country that trended towards fascism also trended towards trickle-down economics, nationalism, and border security. And any countries that trended towards democracy were much more FDR-style governments, ones where they built out social programs and things of that nature. But when I typed into Google FDR fascism, the entire first page was articles about how FDR was more fascist than Hitler, how the real fascism of the 30s and 40s came from America, which to a certain extent, from a Jim Crow perspective, like, you can have a real argument about that. But the idea that FDR style politics were representative of real fascism, and the fact that that's what the entire first page was, that is the reality that we are fundamentally headed towards with AI. some of you listening can probably recognize that Elon Musk's AI is probably lying to you. But then you have your own blind spots for a different AI that, oh, actually, this one's pretty legitimate. Well, no, it either hasn't been corrupted yet, or it's just corrupted in ways that you might be oblivious to based on the ways that you use it. But like, these are all fundamental issues that I think a lot of people aren't even aware exist, let alone are now going to be telling our 12-year-olds to be aware of. We've got 2 calls. One person's been waiting for a couple minutes here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box. Hello.
Hey, Ben, it's Anna. Just had a really quick comment on AI as someone who is both a mother and a progressive. And it is the fine line that I am balancing is I want my kids to have their own original thoughts. I want them to have deductive reasoning. I want them to be able to hold a conversation and be intelligent beings. And at the same time, as a leftist, I recognize that there's plenty of times where those of us on the left who have pushed back on certain things for moral reasons have been left behind. And I know you talked about it at a national level, right, competing against other countries. But I would also argue, those of us that want to see progress happen faster also need to figure out how we're going to use AI in our favor. And I'm like referencing the crypto bros and the Turning Points of the world who leveraged social media so much better and faster than folks on the left. And I think that that's a real concern for us too, as far as progress inside our country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying there, and I appreciate you sharing your own lived experience with how you're kind of approaching it. And it's not new, right? I mean, technology is always getting fancy, and people fear what didn't exist when they were growing, or not fear, that's probably the wrong word, but they are skeptical of whatever's new that didn't exist when they were growing up, because I didn't need that and I turned out fine. Why do other people need it? But I think it's a matter of striking that balance that you talk about there. In order to both stay competitive as well as kind of stay enlightened. But I just know how I would react, and it's a matter of just staying on them and hope that you kind of teach the little ones to kind of practice what you preach there, which I'm sure you'll be following along with as time goes on. But we got the phone lines building up behind you, so I'm gonna let you go there, but I appreciate the call. Okay. And we'll just keep it rolling here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, it's Ben.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hi. So, yeah, when I was growing up, we had spelling bees, and we all would have to stand around the classroom. We'd have to spell things, and if you got it wrong, you'd have to sit down. So
Sure,
there was no spell check. This is the 80s and the 90s, and also, we had to write cursive, which even my oldest kids who are in their mid-20s don't have or didn't have to learn cursive in school. And I think there's an art form to it, like when you say the Declaration of Independence and stuff like that, like how neatly written it is in cursive. It's like an art form to doing it.
Sure.
It was very beautifully written. And also, which really blows my mind is that when I first got my first cell phone, like in my mid to late 20s, and I texted my dad, I remember, and he called me and he said, "Man, if you worked for me and you texted me, I'd fire you." which is funny.
Yeah.
That old school way of thinking. And but it's funny that I've been texting longer than my kids have been alive, all 4 of them. But I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. They can send me 5 text messages while I'm replying to the first message.
Oh, sure.
And they just got a phone. Like, how is that even possible?
Oh, well, it's like I tried to learn how to ski when I was 21 years old, and I broke my collarbone and never went back. But then you see these people that have been skiing since they were 6. It's like they were born on skis, and it's like that's better than walking for them. Like, it's crazy. Like, when you're introduced to something, even when you're learning it with your adult brain, it's kind of like the thing you have to learn, almost like breathing. Like, you don't think about breathing, it just happens. And I feel like that's what texting's like with this. I love the call. I got more callers coming in, and we're pressing up against it, but I think that's great insight there, and I appreciate that. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, Cynthia in Florida. You still talking about AI?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up watching The Twilight Zone. And there's a one. Well, there's several episodes. One was a thing about machines by a guy named Mr. Finchley. His smart house turned on him. I hate this. I hate AI.
Oh, I get it. I get it.
And listen, these things are being developed to use in warfare now. You know, there have been instances where people tried to turn off the chatbots. The chatbots were like, "Screw you! You're not turning me off. I'm gonna do what I want." One man lost an arm when he tried to disable a robot. This is beyond the law and beyond common sense. And people need to go back and look at a man named Jeffrey Hinton. He's the AI godfather. He wished he hadn't created it. He quit Google in 2023. He warned us then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a billion movies. I think you're spot on, and I appreciate the call, Cynthia. Like I said, there's going to be certain components of life that people are like, nope, didn't need it, don't need it, moving on. As Craig in Wisconsin highlights, don't get too excited, everyone. Clint's still banned. I've used Chat GPT to design house remodel projects inside and out. It's a really handy tool for that type of stuff. Exactly. It exists. I used it to put together a social media posting schedule so that I'd be able to keep on track with what I was doing. I don't use it to create my posts. I don't use it to generate my content. I use it as an administrative assistant, and I don't mind that at all. But nevertheless, I appreciate all of the callers and texters. I actually have more texts that I want to squeeze in, but we do have to get one more break in here. We'll put a bow on this show on the other side of that here. Anybody else wants to chime in, 920-281-1150. We'll be back in just a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box here on WHBY. All right, we're back. One final segment before we call it a show. If Betsy's still listening, we got one caller here who simply says that last caller was right on talking about Betsy. Another texter here says cursive is how us old folks will communicate secretly. It just might be. I'll be hired like some kind of code breaker. They'll be like, this young one, this guy with very few grays can speak the gray hair language. Can understand. He knows what a Z looks like in cursive still, which is a sought after skill at this point, which is kind of ironic given there's like that whole Billy Madison thing. You remember when when Miss Vaughn makes him spell risotto and then he doesn't know how to spell Z's. He's like, it doesn't count. That's a word. That's not a word. That's a proper noun. And then she's like, for perhaps you just like to spell the word buzz then. And then he has a meltdown. And like that movie came out in like 1994, and there was a thing about really not knowing how to spell in cursive, and now here we are. Fun fact, apropos of nothing, my grade, quite literally my grade, like class of 06 in Western PA, was the last class where grammar was taught from first grade to sixth grade. There was just no grammar section for elementary school after my year. Like my younger brother's 2 years younger than me, and they like just didn't learn the difference between a semicolon and a colon. And like they just decided like I was the last cutoff. And like, I mean, I think we're all on the same page here that we don't have a firm grasp of grammar in this country. And it seems to be something we probably could learn. Instead of some of the other stuff that we learned. I'm not saying all of it's a waste of time. I'm saying some of it maybe not necessarily as pervasive as other things are. And we probably should have had more of a focus on some of this stuff. But that's just me, of course. There's no right or wrong answers to this, but I came across an Atlantic article talking about this 2 days ago, and I was like, oh, this is a good segment topic for these guys. So I figured we'd dive into it here. No right or wrong answers, and for the record, it's going to be around forever. Which I appreciate. We got a shout out to Maddie, who's listening to the great state of Jefferson. Well, thank you very much, Maddie. Welcome to the party. It's always a fun time here. But with that, we do actually have to call it a show, and you guys know the drill at this point. There's so many ways to take part. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the entire program, download the WHBY app. The audio is available there. You can take it with you everywhere you go. And if you're into the video element of things, I have my own YouTube page. Check me out, Ben Cominos. Go subscribe. You help a brother out trying to start the independent side of things here. Of course, we also have a Facebook and TikTok page as well. And then for those of you that said you need more outside the box, I do an extra hour of content from 7 to 8 p.m. Right now, it's just on TikTok. I'm getting a home studio off the ground. It will be available on YouTube and Facebook soon enough. But that's available from 7 to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So jump on board with that as well. Please subscribe to all of the channels and continue sticking around because Haley's up next with Focus Fox Valley, and I'll be back tomorrow for a Professor's Wednesday. Talk to you guys then. This is Outside the Box.